Now we're going to look at how to organize your workflow to make timeline operations easy. Before we start though, I'll just remind you of a preference that affects what we're going to do here. By default, if you single click on a frame or keyframe in the timeline, Flash will select only that frame or keyframe. Let's have a look though under Edit and Preferences. In the middle, under Span-Based Selection, turn this on, hit OK, and then try it again. This time Flash selects an entire span of frames, from the first keyframe up to the frame before the next keyframe. Another thing that this does is allow you to quickly single click and drag to move a span of frames. Now I personally don't use this, but the choice is yours, and it's good to know if you want to change this later. The default selection method takes a little longer to use, but it does give you more control. So let's turn this back off, change it back to default, and say you want to move a keyframe. You'll need to first click to select the keyframe and then click it and drag. Notice though that you only move that single frame, not the whole span. To select a whole span, either click and drag or select the first frame and then hold down the Shift key and select the last one. You can drag frames sideways down the timeline, as I've been doing, and you can also drag frames to a different layer. And notice that you can also click and drag across layers. You can select whole groups of frames on different layers. You can cut, copy, and paste frames as well, just like you can do with objects and text, but the operations are a little bit different. Instead of going Edit and Cut, Copy, or Paste, choose Edit and then Timeline, and make a choice here. Notice also that you can do a few other things here as well. And take note of the keyboard shortcuts, because once you get used to them, they can save you a bunch of time. Okay, you can also do most of this from the context menu as well, and that's what I'm going to use to show you my next trick. If I click and drag to select some keyframes and copy them using the context menu, create a new layer, and then try to paste these multiple frames into this one layer, Flash at least tries to help us by automatically creating a bunch of new layers. You can see I have just about twice as many now. Be aware though that you may need to do a little bit of cleanup. Now I'll undo this, and we have a few more things to cover before the end of this lesson. In the context menu for some frames on the timeline, modify timeline, you'll see reverse frames. This, of course, will reverse the order of any selected keyframes and consequently reverse your animations. Kind of cool. And finally, you'll see synchronize symbols. This does the same thing as the sync option down here in the Properties panel. It's used when you're pasting a tween into a set of selected frames. The tween frames are automatically recalculated to make the tween fit into its new allocated space. And that's it for managing frames and keyframes.